Namaskar. Hello and welcome to P Guru's channel. I'm your host Sri Iyer. Welcome to DGI 446. A lot of important events happening around the world, and we are here to talk about all these things and do our analysis, our projections, and our forecasts. Let's welcome Sridhar Chityalaji. Sridharji, Namaskar and welcome to P Guru's channel. How are you, sir?
Namaskar. Good morning, good evening to everybody. Doing great, sir. How about yourself?
I'm doing well, sir. And in case you guys are wondering how come Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and UAE are toning down on Islam and toning down fast, we have the answers for you in this slide deck. So may I request all of you to please like this video, and as we jump right in, Sridharji, I'm going to load the slide deck with your permission, sir, and over to you.
Great. Thank you. So we start with the big news that was communicated by the Occidental CEO, Vicky Holub. And that is that if people are not aware that most of the fossil fuels that we are consuming today were, the process started in way back in 1997. And we are soon going to run out because you know what's happening in the United States. By 2025, the shortages are expected to be about 50%. That's a very big news within the context of the oil markets and what is going on in the United States. So that's the first kind of market headline news which captured the attention of everybody, Sriji. Then, of course, the Fed, again, Mr. Dr. Powell reaffirmed that I've stated many times in his interview with the CNBC that there is no rate reduction in the June. And the rate reduction will happen only when they see a sustainable trend in the inflation. Right now, that's not the case. Actually, the inflation went up a little bit. That basically made the markets go down in the US and around the world. Of course, China is a contagion in its own right. It's got its own problems. But broadly, the statement from the continued assertion from the Fed is driving the sentiments down in the market. Exactly 48 hours before, people were talking about with rate reduction in the second half of the year, whether gold will touch 2200s. But after the weekend statement, Monday statement, again by the Fed chairman, the gold prices dipped. It's now around, there's no one talking about $2,200 projection anymore. So you can see how the Fed plays a pivotal role in movement of prices, be it crude, be it currencies, or be it equities, or be it the fixed income market, Sriji.
Sridharji, one question before we go to the next slide. We have actually covered the next slide, which is about the oil forecast. One question here, sir. We know that 20% of all crude sales now worldwide is taking place in a currency other than dollar. Yeah, 80% is still happening in dollar. So in order to keep the dollar attractive for global investors, the Fed needs to keep the interest rates high, because that says that, okay, even if you do nothing, you just find a money market account in the US and put your money there, you're guaranteed 5.5, whatever, 5 to 5.5% annual return, no risks at all. So is this the reason why the Fed is keeping the rates high?
No, I think this question was posed. One of the countries which has been looking at to shift from the US dollar, or at least not the government, but many market pundits have been saying whether India should de-dollarize. And when the Middle East was asked the question, would they prefer to have a trade conducted in Indian rupee versus US dollar, the answer was that the market mechanisms are not efficient. It takes time. There's not enough depth in the market, and there is also transaction cost. So we prefer India to settle in US dollar. So that's That's one aspect or one answer to your question. The actual thesis behind the dollar fluctuation, as you probably know, we have had low interest regime for almost 5-6 years. Eventually, as a result of COVID, post COVID, and the energy prices, supply chain disruptions, especially in February 2021, 2022, when Russia invaded Ukraine, supply chain disruptions and the oil price shot up as much as $150 to $180. So you find that the that in turn flowed by way of costs into the economic system, which is the reason why the rates, US dollar rates, had to be contained. And in fact, the demand for US dollar, what's the other way? The demand for US dollar shot up by way of a reserve, but all other currencies got impacted. We covered this in global markets. Yen got corrected, Japanese yen got eroded, euro at one point in the markets we covered is below below €1 for a dollar. So I think the Fed is not deliberately keeping the interest rates high, so there is a demand for US dollar. That's actually an incorrect assumption, Sriji. Fed wants its inflation to come down. The inflation in the United States is very high. We touched even 11-12% before we have brought it down to about 3.2%, Sriji. So I think that's the challenge. So United States cannot be a second world type of an economy where it allows inflation to reign, allowing the currency to be, eventually it will hurt the US dollar.
Sridharji, what planet is Mr. Powell living in? Here is the Biden administration mulling $1,000 a month to all these illegal immigrant families, and they are expecting them to spend it all. How is inflation going to be contained, sir?
So there are two aspects. One is the government balance sheet. One is the Fed's price stability market mechanics. So Fed is focused on the market, the price stability and market mechanisms. It doesn't want markets to go out of control, and it wants to bring price stability in the market, which is namely the cost at which you borrow money in the US market. Okay. So if people continue to borrow money in the US market and they have no capacity to kind of repay without the corresponding appreciation in the assets, you're going to have huge consequences from a systemic effect on the market side. The only way you can bail out is a government mechanism, as you saw as it happened in the 2008, 2009, or 2007, 2008 GFC. So that's one part. Now you're talking about the government disproportionately borrowing and paying the illegals. Again, we covered this. When you have 18% of your budget allocated towards interest costs because you are disproportionately borrowing, to that extent, the government is unable to participate in the economic development of the nation. You shouldn't be spending not more than 2 to 6% of your budget on the interest costs, notwithstanding the fact, US debt has kind of, doubled or quadrupled in the last 20 years, Sriji. So we need to delineate the two pieces. The social programs has a consequence on the government's ability to influence and drive the economy. The role of the Fed is about market stability and pricing of the markets, Sriji. It doesn't want it to go out of control, and asset inflation and price inflation, which in turn brings about instability and market crash eventually.
You actually segued me into my next question. Sorry, viewers, I have to ask these questions because I've been doing some prep for this work. Sir, a prepared rehire is a dangerous rehire, sir. I'm asking you a question. See, United States debt today is $37 trillion. And they say that, most of it is sovereign debt. Sir, explain to us what is the difference between sovereign debt and non-sovereign debt. 37 trillion is a big number.
Sovereign debt is a debt which is money borrowed by the government to fund its balance sheet because it has got a difference between its receipts and expenditure, but yet it needs to continue to service the economy because good chunk of it is government driven, like social security, like defense spending, like veterans programs, like Medicare, and various other types of programs that the government does, research grants, etc. So when you have typically that you say that it's good to balance the budget and keep the deficit down, but the story is that US has been running deficits for a long time, and the 2008-2009 crisis as well as the COVID crisis has increased the debt of the government, and that is the $37 trillion that you are referring to, of which about $10 trillion is held by overseas investors. Most of the others is held by the US taxpayers or the corporations within US that hold the debt. Now, the question that you are asking is, which is namely, if it is $37 trillion sovereign debt, what is the other debt? There's corporate debt. There is also debt by other kind of agencies which are semi-government, not directly managed by the US Fed. So therefore, when I say US Fed, I mean I'm talking about the federal government. I'm not talking about the state government. So many of these things constitute what you call as the sovereign debt. Now, we covered this or we didn't cover this, I don't know, but I mentioned this to you that, we may not have shown this chart. Total assets of United States is around 210, 220 trillion dollars. When you take sovereign debt of about 35 trillion, there is also public debt or corporate debt and the consumer debt. Consumer debt is mortgages. Many people, when mortgages are securitized in United States, unlike other countries, many people participate in that because there is a good yield. Then you have unstructured debt, which is namely credit cards and auto loans and so on. So you have public debt, and you have corporate debt, and you have sovereign debt. So when you combine this, the number is somewhere close to about $90 trillion. Okay. So the net assets of the United States is around $120 trillion. This is what gives the government the braveness and the boldness to say, look, I'm worth $120 trillion. So therefore, I'm not concerned. This is not quantifying all the assets and reserves that the US government is entitled to, such as oil reserves, natural resources, all these kinds of things, Sriji. So therefore, yes, $37 trillion is a big problem in terms of the budget, but it's not going to sink United States.
Last question before we go on to the next topic, Sridharji. Today, what is the United States fiscal deficit as a percentage?
It is around. It has touched 11%. They brought it down to about 6.1, 6.2%, if my memory serves me correct, Sriji.
Thank you, sir. And viewers, today the rating agencies have actually downgraded United States. But before you start jumping up and having parties, it's only come down from AAA to AA, if I remember correctly. So just one small peg down. So US is still the most reliable place for all your investments. And the whole thing here is how the United States is going to wind down the amount of dollars that is floating around the world outside of the United States. That is the question that I'll be asking Sridhar Chittalajit. Not today. Today I have really put him through the ringer. Let's go to the next question here. Sridharji, the next slide. We touched upon this a little bit. Do you think we should all start getting back to our bicycles, because there is a possibility that there is no petrol going around?
Sriji, I think that if you can get on your bicycles, or if you can get on your bullock carts, or if you're from California, you can bring on your horses and get on your horse carriages to be in the Wild West. Don't drive EV vehicles because, of course, in California, you have no issues with EV. Many people are complaining about when the temperatures freeze, the first vehicle that gets stuck is the EV vehicle. So there's some, kind of mixed opinions around EV vehicles and whether the EV vehicles will deliver. So to answer your question, I think that this whole climate czars and the climate agenda is a big bunkum, and they are trying to effectively, this is a mechanism to deconstruct United States on three fronts. Because one, United States is the holder of the largest fossil fuels. Many of them have been stalled because of this climate czars. Number one. Number two, to conduct wars, US must have, to conduct wars, you have to have enough kind of reserves to fight multiple fronts. United States is one of the largest kind of used to have reserves, and it can fight multiple wars using the fuel which is in the strategic reserves in the in the Mexican Gulf. So that's number two. And number three, because United States don't have a transportation system, national transportation system, everybody is reliant on fossil fuels to travel from A to B. Imagine if you don't have fuel, I don't know whether I can pedal my way all the way from Manhattan to San Jose, Sriji. I don't know how many days and how many months it will take. So these are the three.
As a fiddle, though. You'll be fit as a fiddle, though.
Thank you. So I think that about sums up your responses to your questions. Just one last point. With the Chinese markets kind of tanking because of various suicidal measures that Xi Jinping has been involved in, United States markets today roughly equals 50% of the market cap of the world. In the next DGI, we will show the chart. 50%, about $100 trillion, 100 to $105 trillion market cap. Close to 50% of that is the US. So if you think that the US is going to collapse tomorrow, think about it.
Thank you, sir. And now let's take a quick look at India news. OECD, Sridharji can expand it for us, says they're slowly warming up to the numbers that we have predicted from the CEA, Chief Economic Advisor of India. Last episode, we talked about that India is thinking 7% growth this year. Sridharji, what is OECD talking about? Why are they being more conservative, sir?
Is the Organization for Economic Construction and Development, OECD, and basically, it's like IMF, another body. They think Indian economy GDP will grow at 6.2%. They moved it from 6.1 to 6.2%, but I believe that is a very pessimistic number. I think India will touch 7%, as correctly projected by the Chief Economic Advisor. So, IMF, OECD, World Bank, Economic Intelligence Unit, they all kind of come up with the numbers, which seems to be at least, close to, 100 basis points away from what the economic pundits within India predict, Sriji. And we believe it'll sustain 7% in FY24, 7% in FY25, purely because of the investments that are going in infrastructure, manufacturing, and into the MSME sector.
Thank you, sir. And India says that it will not provide evidence to Canada investigators until Canada shares intelligence, and that this is what the Indian High Commissioner to Canada has said. This is now becoming a bit of an issue, Sridharji. Last week, there was a referendum in San Francisco, and I'm told thousands turned up. But here is the interesting part. These are all mostly illegals who have come into the country, and their lawyers have advised them, go have your picture taken here so that in front of the judge, you can tell, look, I am also being persecuted. Look, here is the proof. I am supporting this Khalistan movement. And because I was supporting it in India, I got persecuted. Therefore, I should be given asylum. All fake stories. FBI has already determined that 87% of people seeking asylum into the United States have fraudulent papers, including Ilhan Omar. I've given you a separate episode on that one. Her last name, Omar, itself is dubious. You can go back and look at that thing. Sir, just a little bit about what do you think is going to happen here? India is digging in.
No, I think that effectively India will win this battle, and India is not going to concede an inch. Canada is not, Canada has got lots of problems, the least of which has to do with this specific problem. It's purely, Canadian coalition government survival, nothing more, nothing less. So India will weather the storm, and both United States as well as Canada is just going to say thumbs up, Sriji.
Now, the other interesting thing here is the recent G7 meeting. The signatories did not include Justin Trudeau. They went ahead and the other 6 signed and accepted that and went on. So there are lots of things going on within the G7 itself. You set aside the fact that it is taking panga, that Canada is taking on India, but within the G7, they are beginning to ignore Canada. I don't know what's going on there.
It's not Canada. I said it's not Canada. Canada not taking on. So it's a faction within the Canadian government which is trying to assert. And if that faction kind of gives way, the government will collapse. So they're acting silent. But Canada sooner or later has to get out of the rut and come out and say, okay, let the government collapse. We are not going to be blackmailed into this type of unwarranted situation, Sriji.
Sridharji, some of the militant-minded members of parliament in Canada, they actually won their seats by basically deceit. The moderate 6 have all been sidelined or been attacked and forced to just basically retire. This is a totally new way they have done it, sir. This Khalistan stuff, it is being funded by drugs. You saw that 406.2 kilos of meth was confiscated from a truck and the driver was a Sikh Canadian. It is also trying to give a bad name to Indians, Indian Americans, Indian Canadians, that look, this is what these guys are, drug peddlers. This is the thing that they are going for, to try and curb the power that Indian Americans and Indian Canadians are now beginning to exert in the US economy, which you said like 50% of the stock market is in US, the valuation is in US. Clearly there is somebody who's getting scared. Anyway, this is just my 2 cents, sir. Feel free to add and then we can go on to this Indian news about Maldives.
It's effectively funded, aided, abetted by a left wing and some vested countries who have anti-centrist right-wing interests, and right on top of the list is India, Sriji. That's all this is.
India-Israel discuss allegations of UNWRA and India's annual 5 million funding to the Palestinian efforts. So the US is now officially, or I think the Republicans have said that US should stop funding UNRWA. And they fired all the staff in UNRWA because it was found that they also were aiding and abetting Hamas. So far, everything has been determined. ICJ has accepted that this is what is happening. So what makes India continue to fund this effort, sir?
Well, I think that the countries came forward. The countries that came forward, I think we reported a couple of DGIs ago. Japan, United States, Germany, Italy, UK, France, they've all stopped the aid. And India is one of the large donors with a $5 million ticket. And because of its concern for the downtrodden or affected people, and also to play probably to the local political audience, it had sustained. But India also has a zero tolerance policy for terrorism and terror funding. So Israel has laid out its case with India and stated that this money is going for terror and you are funding $5 million, which is working against the state of Israel. Is this what you want to do? That's the scope of the discussions. And presented with Indian evidence, India may say, no, okay, we will also come forward and stall and direct it to a different purpose.
Thank you, sir. And Maldives president says that he's sticking with the March 10th deadline of Indian troops withdrawal while the foreign ministers negotiate a different deal. What is the different deal that is being negotiated, Sridharji?
The different deal that's we covered it in DGI. The different deal is that they will replace the staff who are, by the way, they are not conducting, they are not doing any kind of military exercise. They are there to train the personnel to operate that helicopter and other equipment which India has given. That's it. They provide training to the locals. But the president has made a monster out of it by saying that the military personnel, no, they have no military mission in Maldives. The deal that was struck between the two foreign ministers was that these people would be replaced by civilian personnel progressively, so that there is no disruption in terms of training to the Maldives defense and national forces, Sriji.
Well. This guy has managed to make a mountain out of a molehill, but we'll see how this plays out. In US major stories, US vows more attacks, including targeting Iranian-linked sites as a war of words escalates. Iran says it will stage joint naval exercises with Russia and China as tensions escalate over Houthi attack. So the role of China is beginning to emerge much more clearly, Sridharji.
Yes, because it is getting cheap and free funding from pirated oil. Most of the oil goes either to Russia or goes to China, and China is the biggest buyer. I think we have covered that. So therefore, it wants to assert and it wants to be a peacemaker. It can't find peace in its own kind of region. It thinks that it can find peace in the Middle East region. It's putting its spy in every place without getting its own house in order. And I don't think anybody wants to listen to China in the regions, region.
The first time we reported illegal oil was in 2016. And that time, this was happening in Mediterranean. It was the ISIS which was selling illegal oil that was taken out from Mosul. And the mule route ran right through Turkey with the blessings of Erdogan. One of his sons was the one who was taking the money and allowing the whole caravan to pass. And what used to happen is they would load this oil on tankers, and these tankers are supposed to be in touch with satellite. They have something called a transponder that is supposed to give the locations every 30 minutes. So what used to happen was they would once in a while they'll turn off the transponder, and by the time US will detect that thing and then call, they'll say, oh, we had some power trouble, that's why the transponder didn't work. It's back on now. But in that small time, 1 hour, 2 hour, whatever time, there would be barges that will come up to these illegal tankers, and they will drain the crude into that or even finished oil into that, and then the barges will take off. This is how illegal oil was happening. And this is 2016. Gurus was one of the first ones to write about it. And today, 2024, this has become mainstream, looks like, Sridharji.
2023, they don't need to take it. And there's no need for any barges, which we covered, that they will move the ships, and in mid seas, oil will move from one container to another container. The container that brings the oil, has a flag of a nation which is prepared to lend it. And then the container that is taking it has no flag, but eventually it will put on one of the flags and make its way. So it has become very sophisticated, and they can do this navigation mid-seas. And everything is cash. Cash is exchanged, and the price is probably, at a 80%, 70%, 90% discount, Sriji.
And the cash, to add insult to injury, is in dollars, I suppose, Sridharji.
There's not plenty of renminbi available, or yuan is available, Sriji. So you are the cheapest currency. So the best currency is US dollar, because 60% of the currency that is available outside a nation is only 40% of US dollar is circulated within US. 60% is outside. So
yes,
you
indeed.
can see as to many of it, we don't even know whether they are counterfeit or whether it is real. The irony here is that even that counterfeit, a small percentage comes into United States, but a vast part of it is circulating outside the United States. So nobody knows whether they are holding, zillions of dollars of fake currency or real currency.
One country that is supposed to have perfected the faking of US dollar is North Korea. And I wonder where North Korea got that technology from, Sridharji.
Well, there are at least two very famous countries which assist them, and they are their strategic partners. See, they both of them supplied nuclear material surreptitiously to that nation, and anybody can guess which of those which are those two countries.
Yes, indeed. And last one, this is a bit of a masala. Tucker Carlson is in Moscow and rumoredly supposed to be interviewing Putin because there are elections, I would say elections coming up in Russia, where Putin is the candidate standing against Putin and Putin will win. Sridharji, what is there to interview about this person, sir?
Well, first and foremost, it's political sensation. Second, Putin doesn't give interviews to foreign personalities or foreign TV crew. The fact that he's prepared to meet Tucker Carlson is very interesting, which is namely, he is probably addressing the US citizens through Tucker Carlson, Sriji. So there is a message coming from Vladimir Putin. What's his message going to be to the US audience from Tucker Carlson? We'll soon know, but he's definitely going to interview, notwithstanding his assertion, I'm coming here to look for the, what's happening in these elections and interesting and blah, blah, blah. He will have an interview. And this is 2024 election year. We will get to hear about US elections from none other than Vladimir Putin from Russia, Sriji.
In US major stories, more than 150 Republicans call on Biden to end LNG moratorium. A little bit more story on this, sir. What is LNG moratorium?
Liquefied natural gas. What has happened is the climate czars have indicated that please, for the foreseeable future, no export of LNG to any nation. Who are the countries who will be most badly affected? It's the Western allies. Remember when the Russians cut off the supply, when the Russian sanctions were imposed, United States stood up and said both fossil fuel and LNG, it will supply from its reserves at a discounted price. So much of the LNG is going from United States and to some extent the fossil fuels from United States to basically, which is Europe. They are the biggest sufferers as a result of the Russian sanctions. They want to, so therefore, these left-wing climate czars want to stall Europe from the energy, squeeze from both sides, and probably force a leftist agenda. So the Republicans are saying the LNG that we supply has better emission controls and better kind of management of the climate issues compared to Russians. So Russian LNG is inefficient and there are no control mechanisms. And many of its LNG production and refinery plants are outdated. So don't ban if you want to be focused on climate agenda. In fact, give them more. This is the another left-wing agenda during the election time in 2024, Sriji, which they are basically starve United States, isolate United States, in the process, bring the leftist agenda to the fore.
Biden immigration bill. I talked about this in the morning viewers, and I don't know, maybe many of you have seen it. This is about trying to make some sweeping changes into the illegal immigration, to how to regulate entry into the United States. Sir, I thought it had already passed the Senate. Yes or no?
No, it had an agreement, basic agreement, to be tested on Wednesday on the floor of the Senate. By the end of the day, no, there was no agreement. They said 370-page long document, and we need time to understand the finer points. But the biggest point that one has to take into account here is, I think President Trump, through his representatives in Senate and House doesn't want to take anything. House calls it DOA, dead on arrival. That's what the House calls it. So the message has gone from President Trump, this is the most lousy bill that one can think of. It's going to saturate the country with illegals, block it. And eventually Republicans will take the blame. We do not want to take the blame and stall it. So many of the senators who originally thought they would vote or support this resolution have now said, no way, they're not going to do it. So this is what has stalled this bill. It's not going anywhere, Sriji.
We still have a few more news items to cover, so let's kind of try and rifle through these things, Sridharji. Israel is at war. Hamas has rejected a deal on ceasefire and hostages as IDF raids Gaza base, which was used for training October 7 attacks. IDF continues its strikes up north, targeting Hezbollah sites. I think I saw somewhere that Israel said that 30% of Gaza has now been completely destroyed. What do you think is the end game here, and why do you think now Hamas doesn't want to accept the ceasefire?
So the end game from which perspective? I'll give you the two end games. End game from Israel perspective is very simple. They want to cleanse Hamas out of the Gaza. They do not want the authority to be given to Hamas. They want either Palestine or Israelis want to have a say in the administration and governance of the Gaza Strip. That is the end game of Israel. And they will continue to hunt down all the people who are responsible, and they will pursue it until it is done. That's Israel's agenda. Hamas has inflicted the damage. Hamas is now using Iran and Iranian praxis. Hamas itself is an Iranian proxy. It wanted to create instability. It wanted to create economic tensions. It wanted to force the world to come to a position where it will not only concede a two-state solution, but it will continue to assert its power in the administration of Gaza. That is Hamas's endgame. Eventually, Hamas will swallow Palestinian Authority, PLA, as well, Sriji.
Thank you, sir. And Knesset Speaker Amir Ohana, in his meetings with US, NSA, and House Speaker, assert that Hamas must be inflicted with complete and inexplicable defeat for peace in the region. Iran must be given an unambiguous message that the strength of the free world must never be challenged. So these things are going on. US is mounting its attacks on Houthis. Walk us through this thing. Iran says that they have close to 4,000 missiles. Probably only 10% or less than that has been deployed from all the three H-controlled regions, Houthis, Hezbollah, and Hamas. Where do you think this is going to stop? When do you think Iran is going to say, oops, I can't sustain this anymore, or something of that nature, sir?
A Republican president in the White House will bring an end to this war. Biden has no willingness and no intent to start a war, and he will not know how to end it. It's too much of a political liability for him in 2024. He's also afraid that if some of this goes and some components of the war, the collateral damage is the oil fields in Iran, it will shoot the oil prices up, and $5 a barrel at the gas station is an imminent disaster for Biden in the elections, or Democrats in the elections. So this is why this is all a kind of a game. A Republican presidency will bring an end to this. Doesn't matter what Iran thinks it has, Sriji.
So, Sridharji, you mentioned one thing in passing, that illegal oil is being sold by Iran to Russia. Russia itself is producing so much oil. Why would Russia need to buy illegal oil from Iran, sir?
You buy it at 10 cents, you sell it at 30 cents. Very simple.
Oh, arbitrage. Got it. Why shouldn't India buy from Iran then? The same thing?
No. India is still a rules-based country, Sriji. Remember, Russian oil, to move from its docks, from refineries to docks to the destination, goes through sanctions. If you steal the oil right at the point or close to the point of supply, let us say in Red Sea, or in Gulf, on Hormuz, or in Red Sea, there are no issues. You can give it to anybody and pick up cash. It's not coming from Russia. You can put a Panamanian flag, or you can put a one of these Guyanese flag or something, and you can move to the nation and you collect good cash, Sriji.
And there are so many stories here. I would like to cover them separately, guys. Just stay tuned for other research that we are doing, because it is believed that it's not the United States that's maintaining peace in the Persian Gulf and Red Sea. It is actually India. A lot of naval ships are there patrolling, making sure that the Somali pirates don't get their hands on all these things, that the Houthis are in check. I think it's a massive work that India is doing right now. And it's also proving a point to China that this is our area. You don't come here. This is marking your territory, so to say. Anyway, very interesting things going on there also. EU approves 54 billion to cash-starved Ukraine. Um, and I think in this new bill that Senate is talking about, there's also a little bit more aid from the United States too for Ukraine, isn't it, sir?
Yes, United States aid to Ukraine, United States aid to Israel is tied to this bill. Biden asked for money to be given to Israel and Ukraine. The Republicans said it has to be tied to the border wall. And they know the border wall is going to be a fake. So they came up with this lopsided illegal policy, which we covered this in DGI, 5,000 people coming in at a time, and the powers be granted to more than 5,000 people to be expelled, pushed back. Eventually, they will come in one of the next rounds. But this whole 5,000 thing is just is a hogwash. So I think that's why it is going to be DOA, dead on arrival, Sriji. The $54 billion of euro is Hungary put some objections, and I think we covered this. They were trying to negotiate some other, which is COVID funding and some other debt funding, and it went nowhere. And the EU said, we'll bypass you and get that done. And they're using the same tactic as far as Sweden's entry into NATO as well, Sriji.
And in other world headlines, 6 US-backed Kurdish fighters died in the drone attack targeting US base in Syria, says the SDF spokesperson. This is the Tower 22, or is it a different attack, Sridharji?
No, this is inside Syria. Remember that inside Syria, you have two operation centers. You have the Iranian proxy operation center, and then you have the Kurdish, what they call as the defense forces, Syrian defense forces, Kurdish Syrian defense forces. So these are the people who are making sure that these fellows who are operating the border, because remember, ISIS was very active, they are not coming into the Kurdish part of the Syrian. This Syria, Kurdistan, and then the Turkey, they are all kind of fighting that. And Syria and Turkey has bombed these people when actually they supported the Kurdish forces supported the US forces in the ouster of ISIS from that specific region. If you go back 2 years ago,
Mosul,
in Mosul. So if you and this is why the world said that you are betraying the people who actually supported you in the fight against the ISIS. So this is that specific region, and what they're saying is that these drone attacks did not take out but they took out some of us who are defending the region on behalf of the US and defending our own territory from within Syria. So in other words, Syria is the next Lebanon, or it's already, if not the Lebanon, Sriji.
Spain to send funding to UNRWA. So this is where somebody is trying to shore up the shortfall of other countries not giving it money. Does it even have any relevance anymore? The United Nations are the whole entity, and UNRWA is probably one of the most ones.
Well, I think that the United Nations Relief Workers Agency is just not operating in in Gaza alone. It operates in a number of areas. The funding is stopped unilaterally, which means it does impact its funding. So Spain, just is a reflection. The point that we are making here is you have a bunch of nations, Western nations, who have stopped, and then you have nations like Spain saying, no, we'll still give you some money. I think that the aid is about $3.5 million is what they're saying. This is the way the world is divided. This is why there is no resolution. There's no mechanism to resolve any specific conflicts, Sriji.
Thank you, sir. I'm just going to ask just one or two questions, sir, and then we can wrap the show up. First off, thank you, Superman Kryptonite. What's your prediction on gold?
My prediction on gold is that the price movement will happen in the second half of the year when they see first signs. I still expect gold to finish somewhere in the 2000 to 2200 band. I don't expect gold to go below 2000 because the rates will come down unless there is a major geo-catastrophic event, which is war.
Thank you, Harihara Putran, for your super sticker. And Freedom wants to know what kind of impact China's economic turmoil will have on Indian and global stock markets.
The Indian stock market, I can't comment. I think that basically what I've heard from macroeconomic readings is that Indian stock market is going to perform well. Stock markets are driven not by the world markets, but they may be driven by interest rates, but not by what happens in the other markets. Indian market is expected to perform well on the back of a 7% GDP growth. It will naturally kind of be felt within the corporations and the market capitalization. So you can expect very positive moment and the growth to be, anything from 8 to 12% based on the numbers that I have seen. As far as the US stock market is concerned, again, it is insulated. One of the big beneficiaries of fall in the Chinese stock market is United States. United States market cap will continue to grow as the Chinese markets fall. In fact, Asian markets also will kind of catch up to some of the tailwind effect of the Chinese fall. So that's my kind of response to that question.
Thank you, sir. And last question. And before that, I just want to let our viewers who are watching from United Kingdom know that the Sengol is for sale in United Kingdom. It's 50 pounds. And we will ship it to you wherever you are in the United Kingdom. Come to sriir.com, product/Sengol. I'll put it at the top of the comment section of this episode. You can go and click on that link and you can order it if you are in United Kingdom. It may not be staying united for too long, but at least while it is in United Kingdom, it is united. Thank you. And Jack Sparrow, thank you so much. NVIDIA is worth more than some countries. Will it crash the USA market?
No, it's still, its market cap is about $1.5 trillion. No, why would it crash the US market? It will not crash the US market. It's one of the, there'll be some competition that you can expect in near term, but right now, make the ride when the ride is strong with NVIDIA, and there's nothing to kind of for it to crash. Most of the tech companies have had their best ride. They have all given, we probably will do whenever we have time, one of the shows. Most of the tech companies have given a very tempered earnings for the rest of the year, driven by various factors of demand and supply and oversupply, and the shifting to AI type of technologies from the traditional ones. So I think that NVIDIA is a rising stock, and it will continue until there is some other person in the market who is willing to challenge it.
Thank you so much, Sridharji. Viewers, that was a fantastic session. I hope you enjoyed it. Please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to click on the bell button for notifications. Namaskar.
Namaskar. Thank you. Have a wonderful day or have a wonderful evening.